First of all, this case which he showed is already known in Islam as al-all. It is not something which he all of a sudden he discovered. So what is al-all? Al-all is a case which occurs when the summation of shares becomes greater than the one integer. Like for example, in the case which he showed, if we added the number of shares, the equal will be greater than 1. So in this case, al-all method will be used. And we will see how Prophet Muhammad himself commanded us to use al-all method. The following mathematical method is used for getting the unknown values. And it can be used as an explanation for al-all method as well. Now let's take a look at the same case he presented. According to the same case he showed, two daughters will get 2/3. Each parent will get 1/6. The wife will get 1/8. And if we added all these shares, the total will be 9/8. While the total amount of inheritance is 24,000. So is it possible to distribute the inheritance in this way? The answer is yes. What matters here is that the wife should get 1/8 with respect to the rest. And the father should get the 1/6 with respect to the rest. And so on. Which means that when the amount of what the father got is compared to the amount of the rest, it should be 1/6. And when the amount of what the daughters got is compared to the amount of the rest, it should be 2/3. And so on. Now we want the wife to get the 1/8 with respect to the rest. So we will use the simple method of getting the unknown values. This 9/8 represents 24,000. So what would 1/8 represent? By doing cross multiplication. 1/8, i.e. the share of the wife, times 24,000, i.e. the total amount of inheritance, divided by 9/8, i.e. the summation of shares, will give us this value. We will do the same thing with the father and mother. And they will get this value. Same thing with the daughters. And they will get this value. So these are the values which each inheritor will get. Now if we added all these values, the equal will be exactly 24,000. Which is the amount of inheritance. So as I said that when the amount of what the father got is compared to the rest, it should be 1/6. For example, the wife got this amount. And this amount is represented by 1/8. So the father got this amount. To see what this amount represents, do cross multiplication. And the equal will be exactly 1/6. So this means that the father got 1/6 with respect to the wife and the rest. And the wife got 1/8 with respect to the father and the rest. There is also another method which will give the same exact result. We will assume that the total value of the inheritance is 24,000 as he said. So for this method, we will get a value from the inheritance which will allow the inheritors to get their shares from the inheritance. Let's assume that this unknown value is x. From this x value, we will distribute the inheritance. And this doesn't contradict the Quran. Because Allah says, from which you left. So this value is from which he left, i.e. a value from the inheritance. So now this value is called X. To give each inheritor his share, we will add the number of shares. In this case, it will be equal to 9/8. Then 9/8, which is the summation of shares, will be multiplied by X, equal to 24,000, which is the total number of inheritance. The value of X will be equal to this. Now, we will start distributing the inheritance. We will make each parent get 1/6 from the inheritance. And the wife get 1/8 from the inheritance. And the daughters 2/3 from the inheritance. For each parent is the 1/6. So 1/6 times the value of X will give us this. This is what each parent will get, and we will do the same for the wife and daughters. Now by adding all these four values, the equal will be exactly 24,000, which is the value of the inheritance. So we were able to distribute the shares from the inheritance. What matters here is that these values should stay the same with respect to each other. And this mathematical method gives the same results of the previous one. And this method also gives the same results of al-all method which companions of Prophet Muhammad used, as we will see later. And it's not even a problem if the value of shares is greater or smaller than 1. Because Prophet Muhammad said, give the shares of inheritance to those who are entitled to them, and whatever is left of inheritance, then it is for the closest male relative. Now here is the method which is being used by Muslim scholars. And this method will give the same exact results as well.
So the Islamic scholars, what they would do first, they would look at the fractions and get what is called the LCM. Okay? So they would look at 1/8, 2/3, 1/6 and 1/6 and get the LCM, which is 24, and divide the shares according to the LCM. So the person who has 1/8 share, who is the wife, should get 3 out of 24 shares. Who has 2/3 would get 16 out of 24. Who has 1/6 would get 4 and 4 respectively. Now David would, from the time he multiplied the fractions by the total number, he went wrong already. Because the qaida is that the scholars, or the qaida that the scholars have been upon, or the principle that the scholars have been upon, is that you look at the shares and then find out the number of shares that each one gets, and then look at the total number afterwards. So you don't immediately go to the total number as David Wood did. Rather, the last thing you do is go to the total number. Okay? Tayyib. So basically, when you add all of this 3, 16, 4, and 4, you get 27 out of 24. Now basically, when it is, this is called mas'alatul awl, right? Where it is that the numerator is more than the denominator. Now you have 3 cases in Islamic inheritance. If the numerator is less, whatever is left from the numerator is given to the relative asaba, meaning the nearest male relative. If it is the same, then mafi mushkila, no problem. If it is more, then in that case, in the case where it is that it is more, you would strike out the denominator, and the $24,000, which is here, would be divided into 27 different shares. It will be divided into 27 different shares, which is equal to, but to find one share. So one share would be equal to $888.88. Alright? So when you find one share, now you multiply it by the amount of shares that each would have received from 24. So the wife, she gets 3 shares, so 3 multiplied by $888.88. The three daughters would get 16 shares, which is 16 by $888.88. The mother would get 4 by $888.88, and the father that also. Right? And that would be equal to $24,000 approximately.
So this method gives the same results of the previous ones. Quran is giving a general rule for all cases. These verses were not about a specific case. The number of cases could be more than 50. And each case has its own rule. There are other rules of inheritance like al-rad, which is the opposite of al-all. And again, what matters is that all these shares should stay the same with respect to each other. Like for example, if I gave 3 variables, A, B and C, these variables should stay the same with respect to each other, regardless of how much they are increased or decreased. Their values should be relatively the same. Same with the inheritance in this case. The share of the father should always be 1/6 with respect to the rest. And so on. Now someone might claim that I am making up these methods. And that if Muslim scholars distributed the shares, they will get totally different numbers. So now let's see what results will Muslim scholars get when they distribute the shares. If we go to any inheritance calculation software, we can calculate how much each inheritor will get. According to our case, the gross estate is 24,000. And there is one wife. And both parents. And at least 2 daughters. Now let's see if the results will be the same as the results we got or not. So these are the results. This is what the wife will get. And this is what daughters will get. And this is what each parent will get. As we can see that these are the same exact results which we got using the previous methods.